and I'll give you the key. It's easy. Just keep on hopping, keep on rocking, and don't start stopping. Everything you need, just to walk the scene. And if you wanna make it better, you give it to me. I'll embrace it. I believe for you. You wouldn't believe what I see in you. So don't stop. Don't let the drip drop hop. Hold up and make it lovely, make it real, and make it yours. Don't stop.
All right, Barton, I am thrilled to have you on the show because you're like the mineral man. I mean, you've been on some major podcasts, including Ben Greenfield, talking all about minerals, and they are a really important part to health and longevity. And I think they are often misunderstood and totally overlooked. So I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today so we can dive into all of those things.
Totally. Yeah, I'm so glad to be here, Connie. This is going to be fun. Let's get
So
into it.
this is a really interesting thing to be into. What got you into this?
I got into this because I had to. I had to because I had competed in wrestling at a really high level, which is a very draining and energy intensive sport that you don't eat enough. I've started to call it, although I loved it, I'm thankful for all the discipline it's taught me and things like that. It's a big part of forming my character, I think. And just like being willing to do tough things when it doesn't feel good. Of course, there's value in that, but I would say it's self-induced hypothyroidism is really what it is, because when you think about it, you're sweating so much and someone's like pushing on you. So you're activating this like fight or flight, you're in fight all the time. And then you rest in little blips and moments when you can. But we would go until like my vision would blur type thing. Even when I was the best on the team, my senior year and like team captain, you still do something called like king of the mat. And you're just sweating so much and it's insane. So that combined with other sports, combined with going through a really tough degree. I studied chemical engineering in school, and I'd been supplementing since I was a teenager, like at 13 or so, and looking at hacks and how to improve things. So by that point, I had been supplementing for a decade. I knew good brands, and my health started to slip. I lost someone really close to me. I lost my mother around that time, and that, of course, trauma always increases how quickly we burn the nutrients that we are putting in our body. And that became really apparent because I had my first job as an engineer out of school, and I just was certain that I was going to lose my job because I couldn't focus. And I think it was because I was so body aware from wrestling, like checking in all the time. There's a constant feedback loop. And I think women are intrinsically probably better at this than men, but regardless, like different things that we do in life can train us super well. So I think I have that feedback loop whirling in the back of my mind just all the time. And I would go like, I'm not going to have enough energy to get through the day at this rate. So I better decrease. And at some point you can't decrease enough. So you're like napping on your lunch break and all these different things. So what I did is I created a new way for minerals to absorb in the body. That's what chemies do. They take an industrial process, they make it better. And then you get this output, this product that now absorbs much easier. Because what I realized was I had gut dysfunction, and at 24, I was ripped and I was healthy and I was eating organic food and I was not eating toxic trigger foods. And I had good relationships, and I had like so many things to be thankful for. I was in a first world country, and I was thinking, holy crap, if I have this issue, like how many people will have this issue by their 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s. I have just been going at it at like an Olympic level since I was 6. And I'm sure a lot of people that listen to the show can relate to that, some aspect of that, and have done their own similar things. And whether it's Ironmans or whatever it is, running, just overtraining, maybe being exercise addicted, because honestly, to be a great wrestler, you have to be exercise addicted. And yeah, so now I've found balance in just about every area of life. But the thing that was essential for me was I did a lot of different testing, and I felt like so many tests were frankly not that actionable. And then I found a hair analysis with KeyPoint with a great consultation. There's this guy that's now retired now, but I learned a lot from him and a lot of other people along the way in the last 10 years. And what I learned, though, that was really disconcerting, really upsetting, and frankly scary, was that my intuition was right. I was taking a lot of the things I needed to take. I was taking about 5 minerals that were key to the body working well, but I wasn't absorbing them. And what the test showed was I was still chronically, it had been over a year and a half of taking them, and I wasn't absorbing them. And that was evident because it showed I was chronically deficient in them. And I thought, well, that's a huge problem, because I'm already doing what I can do here. So that's really scary. So like, that felt like a prognosis. It felt like life is just like at this limit. And my internal thought was, I refuse, like quietly, calmly, even without anger. I was just like, I refuse. Nope. So I knew most people would have gut dysfunction if I had it at that age, and was, eating all these different things that were good for me, detox the house, all these kind of things. And what I really realized was, okay, particle size matters. And I realized that was this limiting factor in absorption. And I realized that could be improved, because our body takes, and we've been taught like, oh, you need to take magnesium glycinate for this and threonate for that. And then in the old paradigm of absorption, that was true. And it's not now. Like, our magnesium is in a small enough size that it does everything the body needs, because it can go anywhere. It's in the form that the body really wants. And so I applied some nanotechnology principles to an end product with the manufacturer. And, we have a signed contract, and that's about all I can say about it, really. But it's really amazing what you notice in the results, and the fact, and probably our magnesium is the one you notice the most, but people notice like, oh, like our mutual friend Tara, she said she loves to tell people the story of how she got her dreams back. And she didn't realize she was anxious and stressed, and we're talking about her, and she's like the most positive person I've ever met, and also one of the strongest, like definitely the most mentally tough, and also like optimistic and person you want to be around that I've ever met. Maybe male or female, like just incredible, and like total superwoman. She's like, I realized it took like a month or so after your stuff, but I realized that I was really anxious. I was really stressed. I'd wake up in the morning and I'm like, I guess this is what it just feels like when you wake up at 5 and like you're just going for it. She's a mom of 4, and just like in incredible shape, and wasn't always, but like found health and like made a bunch of shifts and learned really quickly, and has a great show too. But she talks about that a lot. She's like, yeah, I had anxiety. I didn't realize it. And I was in that camp too, because when your brain's not working well, it puts you don't feel safe. And that's what it was for me. Short-term memory was really tough to recall, especially with the stress of losing someone really close to me. My parents were like peers growing up. They had a couple kids, and then I was like older. I was like they raised me like a peer. So losing one of them was more of a fear than dying myself. And that was in some ways a huge weight when I went through that, because I felt more free, but it was also like tremendously scary. I lost my job. just like I thought it would. But it did create enough space later on after I got another and lost that one too, that I was finally in a healthier enough spot to really begin innovating. I'd saved enough money. I had a good idea of how to approach all of this. And it's what we do today at Upgraded Formulas. So, yeah.
Well, that's pretty amazing. And it's funny how our mess always ends up becoming our message, right? And it's kind of hard because I think sometimes people are like, oh, you wouldn't know, but so many of us get into this because we do know, and we've been there and we know what it feels like to suffer from things and then have to overcome them. And so I really, really like your story. I kind of want to reverse back a little bit though. So you were talking about testing the hair for mineral deficiencies rather than the serum levels, which would be the blood levels if somebody was to go into the lab and have a blood draw done. So why is it so important, and what separates the two?
Yeah, it's a great question. So blood, I'll take that first. Blood is us on our best behavior. And what I mean by that is blood is so mission critical to our life, that we would die immediately if the blood pH was off, became off just in the slightest bit. By like maybe a 1 pH, we'd be dead. So pretty quickly, and it wouldn't feel good. So it'd be excruciating the whole time. So what the body does, knowing that, is that it pulls minerals from our tissues, our organs, including like all, basically muscles, organs, and bones. So this is how you end up with osteoporosis, osteopenia. You end up with a liver that doesn't work well because you're pulling magnesium from the liver to, balance the blood, because magnesium is, for example, a very balancing mineral, for pH. So these things, I think of it, having a chemical engineering degree, I think of the body as a chemistry lab. And quite literally, nutrition becomes personality, because nutrition becomes habit, and it becomes action, or lack of action becomes habit becomes personality. And this is something I'm writing a lot about. And it's really just incredible to think about blood versus hair, because hair is just like our skin. It's living tissue, and it's 6 to 8 weeks of data. And when you have 6 to 8 weeks of data, you have an average. So, when you've been around someone, for example, let's say you're dating someone, and you're married or whatever, but let's look at the first 6 or 8 weeks of a relationship versus the first date. Like, blood would be like sampling a first date. And honestly, like, we're on our best behavior for probably a first date. And also when we know subconsciously that we're going to give blood in 3 days, we're like, oh yeah, no, I'm not gonna have the dessert tonight, and you're like, oh, look at that, your blood sugar looks good. And like, oh, like, look at, I can name like 30 different things, but like, or you don't drink and alcohol, and maybe normally you do. So like, we want to know like what's truly you, and so that we can truly help you. And that's really the way to think about it. So hair gives you a lot more data. So when you take, so you get about 1,000 times more data per element tested. And we look at minerals, and we look at heavy metals, and we look at the relationships of those, and we look at the relationships of, because just like in life, the relationships are what matters. It's not the individual thing on its own. It's how does it relate to something else? So what's the context? And the context of certain minerals in relationship, for example, calcium to magnesium, sodium to potassium, zinc to copper, these tell us many valuable things about the body. They tell us adrenal function and thyroid function. They tell us metabolism, many other things.
So this is really, really interesting. And you brought this up just now, is minerals and adrenal function and thyroid function. This is like a pretty controversial spot, I guess I'd say, because you have people that have like I'll just use me for example. I have Hashimoto's, right? And you have people that just have thyroid stuff going on for some unknown reason. And then you have people saying, no, you shouldn't be taking X minerals if you have autoimmune. And then you've got people saying, no, yes, you should. And you feel like there's so many contraindications when it comes to minerals as far as people's opinions go with what's right and what's wrong.
Sure. Yeah, to speak to that, what I've seen is, one, do a fast and remove toxic triggers. And you could, I mean, that's one. And then like keep a food journal, because it's either that or it's environment or it's the negative thoughts that you have. So one of the things that we'll offer soon to people after they've done our test and our consultation with one of the nutritionists I've trained myself in this test that's so valuable is that we offer mindset. I went through a NLP hypnosis and practitioner training for therapy, and we like go in and we clip out the like bad code in someone's body, which is, it's crazy how effective that is. And it's not talk therapy, and you don't have to talk about it, then relive it. You just you're guided by one of our coaches in that, and it's wildly effective. I did an 8-hour breakthrough as part of that training, and it quite literally changed my life. And I was already in a great place. This was like several months ago. So like a 2-week-long training. But going back to things like Hashimoto's, with this understanding, so it's all of those, including negative thoughts and negative self-talk, and how we're like, we might be positive out externally, but internally we're like really, really hard on ourselves, or we live in these loops. The other thing is nutrients, of course, because those loops of negative thinking, for example, are like detrimental, like talking to yourself in a way you'd never talk to someone you care about, things like that. Those deplete things, those deplete key minerals in the body, and then those distort our ratios, which drive adrenal function, thyroid function, just blood sugar regulation. So then you're stressed because of this thought or this trauma that's undealt with, this charge that needs to be released but hasn't been. And then you run out of nutrients faster, and then you feel stressed more easily. Then you're snacking so you're not fasting, because right there you weren't actually hungry. So if you're not hungry, you don't need to eat. There's all sorts of things. So I had all sorts of incredible thoughts and breakthroughs, like revelations, when I did a spur of the moment 11-day fast with water and all of our minerals, but no anything else, for 11 days. I had an injury. I partially pulled my hamstring. So I'll come back to that, but I partially pulled my hamstring, and I knew it was going to be a nagging injury. And instead of letting that happen, I knew the body would, with its stem cells coming out of bone marrow day 4 or 5, be able to heal. So I was like, well, I've got nothing to lose except some body fat. Time to heal this and also get shredded. And it was pretty profound. So things like that also heal the tight junctions in the gut, right? So we have these loose junctions, we're all like here. And then when you only eat for like 7 or more days, 5 or more days, you start to get back to this point where now this is the microscopic look of what your gut looks like, and it's complete, it's sealed. So, and you'll notice that when you go to the bathroom, you have these nice, like full, long poops, and frankly, it's important. It's really important. It's a great way to know like where you are. If you're not having that, you can probably do a fast. I'm writing a book on that. We're putting out a course on that, like how to do extended fasting safely, with all the different things I learned, and minerals absorb really well. It's just key. So with hypothyroid specifically, all of that is something I would really meditate on, maybe listen to that again. And then the thing there too, I will say, is that iodine gets demonized, for example, but there's a couple things you have to understand. First, you need to look at the adrenals more than you look at the thyroid. because without the adrenals having the nutrients they need, your thyroid's never going to work well. And if you take thyroid medication, it will certainly make everything worse. And some people are like freaking out right now. It's like, oh God, I'm listening to this, I'm on thyroid medication. Yeah, I've been there too years ago. I've gotten myself off of it. We've had people, I can't say this, but I can, from a testimonial standpoint, we've had at Trainer Lindsay on Instagram, we reviewed her analysis and she said this publicly on the IG Live. She said that she got off of her thyroid meds by using our magnesium, potassium, our peak thyroid. And she had been taking sleeping meds for 22 years, like since college. And she got off of that too. She just like didn't need it and just like stopped taking it. And it's amazing what happens when you absorb the minerals really well and you take what you need. She did a hair analysis, all these different things, got good results. So it's precise nutrition, and it's nutrition that absorbs well, and it's testing to know what you need. So yeah, everyone should, from my perspective, take some iodine each day. Why? Well, your thyroid needs a few different minerals, and they're all in peak thyroid. But yeah, I mean, without those minerals, your thyroid can't produce hormones. I think people forget the disconnect that the thyroid does not produce hormones through magic, or they don't know the magical process. And you need fats and you need minerals. And most people are not eating very much iodine at all. And we think we know our stuff here in America. And frankly, when we look at Japan, for example, they are so much healthier. And they also, in this topic, they eat 80 to 100 times more. I'll say that one more time, 80 to 100 times more. At least that's our RDA, 80 to 100 times our RDA, 100 times. So what I'm talking about is like, you could do like 5 times your RDA. And I could care less if someone pushes back, because I don't think they have the deep understanding I have of this. They're just like arguing like with some fact that they heard 10 years ago or 2 years ago or whatever. So I would say relax into that, probably listen to that again. And if you're a little upset by that and you feel triggered, then it's just like something you needed to hear. So yeah.
I find that to be a truth. Totally. When people are a little triggered and upset, they really need to look at the inner workings of what's going on, because there's maybe something they need to reevaluate.
Totally. Yeah. Learning is like that's why I think the people that learn the best are like the people that can feel a trigger and ride through it and can stay focused and keep learning. So
I want to reverse just a little bit. You were talking about gut health there. So in my anecdotal experience, just managing clients and my own health as well, so you were talking about how you were young and you still had gut dysfunction. And I find that is a more and more prevalent thing in society. There's so many things that can be a trigger to that. One of them is definitely stress, right? We live in this extremely high stress society. So that's revisiting everything you just talked about. But people start taking all of these minerals and all these things, and they're not able to easily absorb them because their digestion is flawed. Can you touch a little bit on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's where I was. That's where a lot of people are. And that's the reason why I think most people have the issues they have, frankly. They don't have the energy. They feel bloated. They feel constipated, or they are constipated. They have a headache. They have migraines. They struggle in every area of health and fitness to some extent. Their fasting blood sugar is not good. They're inflamed. All of these things. I mean, you're going to be inflamed if you don't poop often, if you don't detox well. That's going to happen. Why? Because the toxins are being reabsorbed. So like, think about that connection. Think about how your body's having to deal with that. Now, you're not going to be constipated if your body's getting enough magnesium, that keyword, that it absorbs often enough. So I struggled with constipation as a kid when I was wrestling, because I was sweating so much. And at that point, it wasn't like early at like 7 or so, I wasn't supplementing. And, and that was like the 90s. So I didn't know anything about supplementation. No one really knew much then, or very few people did, and nothing like today. And yeah, so I remember just like walking into like a Denny's, and it was like a trigger for some reason. I was just like, I knew I was going to eat a lot. So I just like be in there for an hour, and it was terrible. And I was like, I don't understand my body. And this is like a young kid. I don't understand. And I share that ridiculous story because most people struggle with constipation fairly often, like multiple times a month, I would say. And it's so preventable. But it's also one way that your body's letting you know that you're just not doing something that you need to be doing. So I think fasting is a great way to heal the gut. You can take glutamine on an empty stomach 3 times a day. That's a good protocol, like 3 to 5 grams, 3x a day. And then, just not eating when you're not hungry is a great thing, but that's going to ultimately reduce the nutrients you're taking. So I would be doing a hair test to see what you're missing as you're doing this, because when you start eating less, you do start taking in less nutrients. But ultimately the body needs to heal itself first, and then it will heal you. So you need to let it heal. And that's really how I think about it. But, in the interim, you have to take minerals that you're going to absorb well. And minerals, for anyone that's been thinking about this and hearing me say minerals and not vitamins, I really do mean minerals, and I don't mean vitamins. Why? Well, vitamins, let's say it this way. Minerals, your body can't produce minerals, right? So minerals are what make up, and I really mean elements too, like just like chromium, vanadium, but lesser known things like manganese, not magnesium, but manganese. We put these in our blood sugar support formula, and it's soon that'll be called upgraded metabolism, depending on when you listen to this. But things like that help with specific things like the back and forth between insulin and blood glucose. So it's incredibly important to understand what these minerals do. So we have a free ebook that pops up on the site that I wrote that's on topics like this that people can go and check out on upgraded formulas. And then, you have to know what you're missing. You need to be supplementing it with something that you absorb well. And I think that's the fastest track to getting back on your health, especially if you don't want to do a long fast. And that feels scary, which I totally get and I totally understand.
So are you able, Barton, to break down some of obviously they all work together and they have so many processes that are important in, but some of the main minerals that we need to be looking for or that are important, and what processes they support, or some of the processes they support, so that people kind of have a better idea of like why potassium could be important, or why, magnesium is important and what it helps with, stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah. If you want to give me like maybe one mineral at a time, and whichever one you want to go through, and then we can talk about them.
So let's talk about magnesium first, because I feel like that is one that's kind of misunderstood, because like you did bring up earlier, there are so many different forms of magnesium. Most people are buying like magnesium oxide from the grocery store, and they think that they're getting what they need as far as supporting their magnesium processes. And so magnesium is a really important one, and it's involved in so many things in different forms as well. So could you kind of break some of that down a little bit?
Certainly. Yeah, it's a great place to start. So, and great question. So magnesium oxide is so poorly absorbed, it's about 4% absorption, that it actually, because it doesn't work very well, it's great for relieving constipation. So that's something. But you can also just get beyond it with a product like ours, which is an elemental magnesium that I've taken and put through our processes, and then we've bound it with chloride. So it's not magnesium chloride as you would think of it, which is also fine, but it not nearly as effective as what we offer. But your body does also need chloride, and it does certainly need magnesium. This is, and then there's other forms that, even if you're talking about threonate or glycinate, those will absorb it about 25% or less instead of roughly completely with ours, which is what you really need to banish a deficiency. If you're absorbing 25%, think about it. It's like your car is running down the interstate and you're like filling it up with gas. So of course it's just going to be continually burning it, right? So you have to be able to like put in enough so it fills the tank. And then the symptomology that you're suffering with begins to disappear. And you're like, wow, okay. And then now you wake up and you have clarity of thought. You want to have an active weekend instead of laying on the couch. You can work as late as you want. You can just enjoy the free time you have. So some of the things that Magnesium helps with, we have a great video if people want to head over to our YouTube, Upgraded Formulas on YouTube. You can just search that and find, I think, 25 things that I put together on magnesium deficiency and what that looks like. But a couple of them would be, do you feel bloated? Do you have headaches? Do you have migraines? Do you wake up one or more times during the night? Do you have anxiety? Do you have anxiety some of the time? Do you feel, quote, stressed? Maybe you call that something different. Do you have a tough time getting going in the morning? Do you cramp easily? People think cramps are potassium. They're mainly magnesium because it's the muscle not being able to relax. And that's what magnesium really allows. Magnesium is a sedative and a calming mineral. Potassium is a stimulating mineral. So it's muscle contraction. So we can hop over to that one now. And if you like, and I can talk about that. It's a good bridge. So potassium is muscle contraction. So it's great if you're wanting to feel strong and have that. I mean, it's the electrical impulse in the cell. Magnesium actually protects against potassium loss. And the interesting thing about potassium is in studies, they found that potassium levels, high potassium levels are inversely correlated with all-cause mortality. So people are just literally closer to death when they have low potassium levels. And it's just like, there's no other way to say it. So it's a very important mineral. 98% of us, from some research I've looked at a few years ago, was the number of us, the percentage of us that are deficient in it. It's really tough. The soil's really depleted, so it's tough to get enough potassium or really any mineral. There's another study in the 1940s that showed that from then till now, we have lost roughly 40% of the nutrients that our soil used to have, which is alarming because it's not that long ago. We're talking 80 years. So, and I've seen other tests and studies that are that or maybe a little more. So you're not going to eat 40% more. So what are you going to do? Minerals are 0 calorie, but you have to get them, you have to absorb them. So this is why I chose this area to focus in, because when we have sunlight, enough water, and all the minerals we need, we activate all the enzymatic pathways in our body. And as long as we have enough body fat, we're able to really fast indefinitely with those things. And this is the point where I would say consult your physician or your nutritionally, better yet, a nutritionally informed physician. Some are not. Many are not, because they didn't learn that in medical school. They learned medication and drug interactions. because that's what pharma paid for in the curriculum. But hey, that's another topic for another time.
Yeah, that's one I deal with on a daily basis. But yeah.
so that, and like there's some super intelligent doctors out there that really know nutrition too. My friend Jamie Siemens, one of them, we're doing an interview Friday as well, actually. So so yeah, those are some thoughts. Potassium is really key for adrenal health. That's probably my most favorite thing to talk about with potassium. So if you're tired and you're struggling to get out of bed, you feel depleted after your workouts, it's a good chance you have potassium deficiency. Sodium is another one. Sodium has been demonized. Sodium helps stabilize. Yeah.
You just stole that out of my mouth, because before you even were going to get going with that, I was going to be like, okay, let's talk about sodium. Why has it been demonized so bad, especially by Western medicine? It's so sad to see. Like, just, I had a family member just move up from Boise recently, and her husband actually he literally died like at 27 years old.
Oh my God.
Died. It was a very traumatic experience. They revived him after he had been dead for 20 minutes, and he's okay now. Has to have a pacemaker and stuff. But we were talking about it, and they were like, yeah, well, we don't do any salt or anything like that because the doctors told him not to because of his exactly. And I have patients constantly where I have clients where the doctors have taken them as patients, and they have removed all of the minerals from their diet. And because of that, I'm seeing these downstream effects of other health conditions. And it just blows my mind that they are so naive, and that some of these old fallacies are still hanging on. So anyway, sorry, I got off on a tangent there.
Great.
But
no, that's a great thing to mention. I'm glad you mentioned.
So anyway, back to that. You stole the words out of my mouth with the demonized sodium, but
that was key though. I'm glad people heard that from you too. And it's crazy because the whole hypertension thing is false anyway. That was, you got to follow the money. That was paid for by sugar interests when they found out that, hey, when people eat less salt, what do they eat more of? Sugar. Ooh. And what I would challenge anyone on this is, if you're eating really good quality, like pink salt, really fine grain, you're mixing in your water, you're testing your levels using hair, and like getting a good consultation, really understanding this picture more and more. If you try to eat too much salt, your body really, granted, you need to be watching your potassium too. So again, test your levels, don't guess. And do it with hair. Otherwise, you'll spend way too much money in blood, and it really won't be that accurate. It's a day's worth of data. But looking at your sodium and your potassium levels, sodium helps your body retain magnesium. It helps your heart relax. You're much less likely to, there's a lot of studies. I think there's 43% reduction in, what was a specific, it was a heart failure of some sort. And, there's a lot of different ways the heart cannot work properly. And we have different labels for that. But ultimately, it comes down to the electricity the heart is able to produce and receive. And that is directly correlated and made possible by minerals, the chemical reaction of minerals in the body, cellular level. Because what is the heart? Ultimately, it's a collection of cells that do a certain thing. What do those cells need? Well, all cells need to be able to make energy, and they need to be able to detox well. And if you do that, you have health. And to the extent you don't do that well, you don't have health, you age poorly. You don't have the energy to show up in relationships. Life is dull. I've felt all of these things before, so none of this is anything except a warning. But it is a warning, and it will happen to you if you don't take care of yourself. And this is the best way to take care of yourself. Sodium, though, ultimately, to say it just most straightforward way, be as direct and blunt about it as possible, is if you try to eat too much salt, your body lets you know, hey, I'm I have enough salt, thank you. And you can not do that with sugar. And sugar depletes all these vital minerals too. It changes your blood pH, so then your body has to fix that. It's amazingly fascinating that we live at all, given how many mistakes we make.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of started to touch on like iodine and chloride, but those are also both really, really important. Can you kind of explain a few of the processes that those are involved in?
Sure. So iodine is really key for making thyroid hormones. We have, chloride is really essential for, it's an electrolyte. It's essential for a lot of different things in the body, fluid balance, etc. And it's beautifully important. So a lot of our products, we bind them with chloride. So, because it's also needed, and we needed a way to stabilize these nanoparticles that our system produces in a way that's usable to the body and stable, so that every dose is equal. So we do all of that, and we third-party test every batch, and we check it for not only like cleanliness, like lack of heavy metals, but also potency, like per sample, and it has to pass that, otherwise we don't ship it. So it's really important to understand that iodine is also antiviral and it's antibacterial. So I've taken that all through this time that we've been in, and and it's awesome. It's a great immune booster. Iodine has been used, and granted, most iodines taste really bad. Ours tastes a lot like coconut water, just naturally. There's no flavorings. But you can put that on your skin, and it's antimicrobial, antibacterial, and antiviral. Zinc is also antiviral. A lot of people listening to the show probably know that things like hand sanitizer is actually only antibacterial. It's not antiviral, which is like really confounding and super confusing to me from the very get-go of this whole thing. It's also bad for you. Just like,
it's so bad for you, and that's like the worst part. But
it is a great product for people that they can sell. So I think that is why it happens. And really for no other reason except for that. I'll have someone fact check me on that. And then I'll be sure to like disregard it because I don't understand chemistry if they disagree. But I'll just move back to like more common territory. So
I just see these people rubbing this stuff. I mean, this is totally off subject, but it's become like this every 30 seconds they're
rubbing it under their underarms and their face. They're doing the hokey pokey.
There's so much garbage in it, that toxic crap that you are rubbing into your skin, which is like your biggest organ, and it soaks up the most everything. And then it's not even really getting you what you need. And like me personally, I don't want that crap on my skin. I feel like I'm going to be sicker from rubbing that stuff on my skin than I ever would be if I got something else. So go wash your hands with real soap, or don't do anything about it until you can. There's just don't buy that garbage, and it's really bad for you. Bad for your children. All these things. But there are natural ways that you can clean up things, and iodine's one of them. It's great. And when you have that in your body, it's great because it's very protective against, like, it blows mercury off of bindings like thyroid binding sites, thyroid hormone binding sites. That's key. Mm-hmm. So we were talking off camera a little bit, and you were like, oh, you went on your long ride yesterday. You were probably deficient in this, and this. So let's kind of dive into this a little. Let's talk about the importance of minerals in athletics, because I think there's a lot of people have these like thoughts in their heads about why something happens. And I'll just use one example. Sometimes, like, the common term bonking out, like when you run out of glycogen and your blood sugar drops, and then you are totally feel like garbage. It's my personal opinion that bonking out is actually more of an electrolyte related process than it is a blood sugar process. And that a lot of times the symptoms of low blood sugar, or quote unquote bonking out, is actually more of an electrolyte balance problem. So I would love to chat with you about this because I finally have the right guy to talk to it about.
That is so great. Yeah, I was a little nervous at first when you were talking about it, and then I was like, oh no, she totally gets it. Good. So yes, that is my perspective. It is definitely electrolytes. It's definitely minerals, and you also have minerals that control blood sugar, like so you have manganese, you have chromium, zinc to some extent, magnesium to some extent, trace minerals. We put all of this in one of our blends, one of our products, but the minerals that your adrenals need, magnesium, potassium, sodium. This is why you need to test your levels and not blindly supplement. And when we bonk out, I mean, the liver has a ton of fuel in it. So it's really hard to deplete that, but it's really easy to take someone that's been over exercising that already has low sodium and get to a point where they just can't, they're temporarily in like ultra hyponatremia. So yeah, I mean, this is where my friend Eric Anderson was able to qualify for the Ironman Hawaii, like the World Championship, back in Coeur d'Alene a month ago or so, up where you are.
It was brutal.
It was brutal. It was literally over 100 degrees.
Yeah, it was like 110, I think. I mean, I had a
God.
couple friends in it, and the course was a battlefield, like people
Yeah.
throwing up everywhere, laying on the ground, cramping, extreme heats and temperatures. Like my friend got off of her bike and she said like her shoes were trying to melt from the pavement.
Oh my God.
Being like the heat of the pavement. I mean, we're talking crazy extreme stuff.
And wow, that's an amazing story. And with Eric on the men's side, he had never qualified for Hawaii for the World Championships. And then he came and saw me, and he had already done a hair analysis. We knew what his levels were, and we got him like really mineralized before the race, and was working on his levels probably a month and a half, 2 months before, which was great. And then I did a second test right before we left, made some more tweaks, and then he took, like, he was taking some of the magnesium during the race. Like he ate a couple capsules of the magnesium. He was taking potassium in his water, or upgraded potassium, and then a bunch of salt. And then and he said it was the most fun race he's ever run, which is crazy given that people understand what you just said.
Yeah, it was bad. The heat was insane.
He passed the number like 7 or 8 guy in the world on the last lap because he was just out. He had cramped up so bad he couldn't finish. And he had probably done the same race preparation. That guy had probably done the same preparation as all his other races and was consistent, but it just didn't work because, you know, the demands on the body to keep it cool were so intense. You know, so the heart is pumping really hard. The body's trying to cool itself. And that's where we spend a lot of our energy, like over 90% of our energy, to just cool ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. That's a really super interesting thing because it's definitely something I've noticed when I started getting into endurance sports, was that it's not necessarily a blood sugar problem. It's more of a hydration / electrolyte problem. And then what some people do is they tend to just keep drinking a ton of water. They don't replenish their minerals. And then they're just flushing all that stuff out and compounding the problem. They're ending up with cramps and all sorts of crazy things like that.
Perfectly said. Yes. Yep. I really agree.
So if there was one really important thing you wanted to bring to the table and like talk to all my listeners about, what would the most important thing they need to understand about minerals be?
That you can reverse your that's a great question. That you can reverse your deficiencies, and if you absorb the nutrients well, and if you understand what you're deficient in and the most important deficiencies to address first, in what order. Our consultations really help with that. I'm a nutritionist too, and I've trained our nutritionists. This is the area I've become like one of the experts in the world in, and it's something I rely on all the time. So I'm as good at it, and everyone on the team's as good at it as they can possibly be, really. And it's great to be listened to with your health. So that's a big part of what I always did when I did consultations, and then that's what they do for the company now too. So it's been beautiful to see that happen. And we offer people certification course where they can come through and get a lot of the knowledge I have. So because I'm all about zooming out from this, I want to address root cause problems. So we give back to charity water, and we have since even before I started the company. I was donating personally, but a portion of all sales every month go to that. So that's a root cause problem. Water solves a lot of things. If you don't have water, you drink bad water, you end up with like tumors that have to be cut out, all sorts of issues. And then they do a great job because they have their salaries taken care of by donors every year. So when people donate on the site, it's 100% pass through to drilling wells. So that's key. And then back to the consultation, when we teach people how to help other people, they can just order the test from us, and then they can give that to their either clients or patients and help them and really have sovereignty over their health. They can take their health back into their own hands. And I didn't feel confident and really safe and stable in my life until I could do that. And the difference is I just walk through life with so much more confidence than ever before. And I'm like physically stronger and more resilient, and my brain works better. So I just, this whole self-reliance piece is I feel really good, and I enjoy life a lot more. So yeah, it's good to achieve a lot in life. It's also important to be able to have the energy to enjoy it.
Yeah.
With people that you really love. So yeah.
It's absolutely. I kind of, I can think of, so I used to work a really crazy job in healthcare, and it was highly stressful, and I made a lot of money doing it. And I always tell people this, I'm like, listen, when I decided to quit that and just go into work business for myself and start helping people, I knew I was not going to make even close to what I make, what I made in my normal day job. But let me tell you something. I started to look at it this way. We pay for fancy vacations and we pay for all these things to bring happiness to us. But what if bringing happiness to us meant just having a job that we loved and not being stressed out all the time and spending time with family? To me, that kind of happiness can't be purchased. So if I need to drop all of those other things that buy me happiness and just enjoy life and be a happy person, that was completely worth it for me.
Totally. Yeah. Lean into what you love.
Yeah.
Especially if it takes discipline to accomplish. If it's difficult, but it feels easy to you, just lean into it. That's probably what you're here for.
So you guys have a pretty great platform, because not only are you just saying, okay, here's our store, go buy our minerals, you're comprehensively looking at everything and then making recommendations on an as needed basis. So it's not like just assuming somebody's low in something and saying, take this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we help really understand the person, understand, well, what medications are you on, and what else are you suffering with, and things like that. And pretty soon we'll help with the mindset piece, which is so key, like we talked about earlier. But it's not just supplements, it's also food choices, and saying, hey, you can eat more of this and this is going to help you because it's high in that, or here's a plan for that. So really, really good there as well. I mean, it's the approach I take, and that's what I've taught. So
I love that. So if people want to look into that, where do they find you? Where do they hit up your website and learn more so that they can pursue this if it's something that sparks their interest?
Sure. Upgradedformulas.com, upgraded with an ED, and formulas, FORMULAS.com. And they can use code Connie at checkout, CONNIE for you, created that for you. So any listeners to the show can do that for your very first purchase. And then, so we'll pay for the first 15% of that, of your order. And, it's just a great push to be able to go and like get the test, get the consultation. We have some bundles on the site that make it even more affordable. But the testing is affordable. And the people that get the best results are the ones that test with us every 3 months or so, because your levels change, obviously, because you're doing things to change them. And then you need to get a new roadmap, and that really, really helps. So, but at least a starting point, get your eyes open, get at least one test and consultation. With that, like I said, portion of that goes back to charity water. Company's doing well, so I really want to be able to do more and more work with them. That's a really important, really important thing to me, is to help them. It's just not fair that some people don't have clean water. It should be a human right, and we should have solved that with all the money we spent on a lot of different things in the last year and a half as a just citizens on Earth. But there's still a lot of people that need it. So those are some things that are, I think, really important to think about. And of course, we have our YouTube channel. You can find me on Instagram. You can find the company on Instagram. You can search Barton Scott and they'll come up. Those are thank you. This has been such a great conversation.
I certainly appreciate you joining me, and I'll make sure and I get all that stuff into the show notes as well. So if people are driving and they don't have a pen and paper handy while they're listening to us, they can always revisit those show notes and get all the information that they need.
Love it. That's so good.
It's been a pleasure, Barton. Thank you so much for joining me.
Such a pleasure. Thank you. Talk to you again soon.
That sounds great.